Donald Trump didn't just attend the NATO summit, he took it over. In just 48 hours, the world's most powerful military alliance rewrote its future, pledged hundreds of billions in new defense spending, and bent to the will of one man who once called it obsolete. But while the cameras focused on handshakes and photo ops, something far more dangerous was unfolding offstage. Iran's supreme leader reappeared from hiding with a chilling warning. The war might have paused, but the threats haven't. And what Trump said and didn't say is raising eyebrows across the globe. Because what happened at this summit wasn't just about NATO. It might have been the start of something much bigger. This wasn't your typical NATO summit. Behind closed doors in The Hague, leaders of the 32-member alliance signed off on what some are calling a return to Cold War-level defense policies. The headline move? A massive hike in military spending, raising the target from 2% of national GDP to a staggering 3.5% by 2035. It's the most aggressive military budget plan NATO has endorsed in decades. And it's not just about buying more tanks or fighter jets. For the first time, allies can now count military aid to Ukraine, infrastructure upgrades, cyber defense, and civilian preparedness toward that total. That means money will flow into bridges, ports, airfields, even national power grids and internet systems, prepping countries for the possibility of future war. But this isn't a done deal. Several nations, including France, Italy, and Belgium, are already bracing for economic strain. Spain flat out refused to sign on, and skeptics are asking, is NATO building a stronger defense or simply laying the groundwork for the next global conflict? One thing's clear, this wasn't just about budgets, it was about influence. And the man pushing hardest behind the scene was Donald J. Trump. If there was any doubt about who dominated the summit, it vanished the moment Donald Trump walked into the room. NATO leaders didn't just listen to Trump, they restructured the entire summit around him. The schedule was shortened, the final statement trimmed down to a single page. The message was clear. Keep the US president focused and keep him happy. And it worked. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte even sent Trump a glowing message mid-flight, calling the summit a great achievement and telling him flat out, Europe is going to pay in a big way, as they should, and it will be your win. Trump wasted no time posting the message online, bragging about the new spending commitments as a personal victory. For years, Trump had hammered NATO for being a ripoff and accused allies of freeloading off the US military. But after this summit, he said the tone had changed. These people really love their countries, he told reporters. It's not a ripoff. We're here to help them protect their country. Behind the curtain, Trump wasn't just influencing NATO policy. He was defining it. But while European leaders tried to keep pace with his demands, one key issue quietly fell off the table. For the first time since Russia invaded in 2022, Ukraine wasn't center stage at a NATO summit. There was no bold announcement about fast-tracking membership, no roadmap, not even a clear mention of it in the final communiqué. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was there. He met with leaders, joined them for dinner at the Dutch king's residence, and had a short private talk with Trump. But it was hard to ignore the optics. While NATO pledged billions in defense budgets, Ukraine's long-term status was quietly pushed aside. Instead of promises, NATO leaders offered a vague reaffirmation of sovereign commitments to support Ukraine. In diplomatic terms, that's as non-committal as it gets. And yet, the timing couldn't have been more delicate. With the war barely on pause and Ukraine's military infrastructure battered, Zelensky arrived hoping for clarity. What he got was silence. Some say the shift was intentional, an effort to avoid provoking Russia further. Others believe it was all about clearing the stage for Trump. But as NATO leaders avoided Ukraine's membership question, an even louder voice entered the arena, one that hadn't been heard in days. Just as the NATO summit wrapped up, a familiar but missing figure reemerged, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. After nearly 2 weeks in hiding, Iran's supreme leader appeared in a pre-recorded video, his first public statement since the ceasefire with Israel and the US. But this wasn't a message of peace. Khamenei's tone was combative, his words carefully chosen. He claimed that Iran had delivered a slap to America's face by striking a US airbase in Qatar, an attack he said proved Iran could hit American targets anywhere, anytime. His voice, noticeably weaker and hoarse, did little to soften the threat. And when it came to the U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, those massive bunker-buster bombings that President Trump declared had completely and fully obliterated Iran's program, Khamenei shrugged them off as overblown. They couldn't achieve anything significant, he said. But there was one strange omission. No mention of the status of Iran's nuclear program. No update on the damage. No talk of retaliation plans. It was as if the heart of the conflict had suddenly gone quiet. Still, his message was clear. The fight wasn't over. And while Iran tried to project strength, evidence on the ground told a very different story. Khamenei may have tried to downplay the U.S. assault, but the facts are harder to ignore. According to the head of the UN nuclear watchdog, the damage to Iran's nuclear facilities wasn't just serious, it was devastating. Rafael Grossi, director of the IAEA, publicly stated the sites had suffered very, very, very considerable destruction. And while he stopped short of using the word annihilated, he made one thing crystal clear. Iran centrifuges were likely no longer operational. That's not just a setback, it's a near collapse of years of nuclear development. Iran, for its part, finally admitted some truth. Its own foreign ministry confirmed their nuclear installations were badly damaged. Quietly, they conceded what Khamenei wouldn't. The strikes were effective. Yet despite the scale of the attack, Iran hasn't allowed international inspectors in. That silence is fueling speculation. How much of their nuclear program is even left standing? Meanwhile, Trump doubled down, calling the mission a wild success and declaring that the threat had been neutralized. But experts warn the opposite could be true. When a cornered adversary hides the extent of its losses, it's often preparing something else. And sure enough, Iran was already signaling its next move. With both sides claiming victory, the world braced for what might come next. Iran's response? A thinly veiled threat wrapped in a ceasefire. Khamenei insisted that the U.S. only entered the war because, in his words, the Zionist regime would be utterly destroyed without American help. He painted the U.S. intervention not as dominance but as desperation. And Iran's retaliatory strike on the American base in Qatar? He called it a message, a warning that the Islamic Republic can strike vital U.S. military outposts at will. This action can be repeated in the future, Khamenei warned. The enemy will pay a heavy price. But Trump saw it differently. He dismissed the strike as a very weak response, even claiming that Iran had tipped off the U.S. ahead of time. No casualties, no real damage, just a political gesture to save face. Still, behind all the bravado, something had shifted. On the ground in Iran, signs of normalcy were starting to return. Airspace reopened, shops in Tehran flickered back to life, and after 12 brutal days of war, people were breathing again. But even as missiles stopped flying, the battle wasn't over, because whispers of diplomacy were growing louder, and not everyone was happy about it. As the dust began to settle, a new headline quietly emerged. Trump hinted that American and Iranian officials might sit down for direct talks as early as next week. It was a stunning turn. After back-to-back military strikes and one of the deadliest escalations in recent Middle East history, the idea of diplomacy sounded almost surreal. But Trump, never one to shy away from spectacle, teased the possibility of something bigger, a long-term peace deal. Iran, however, wasn't playing along. Officially, Tehran denied that any such talks had been scheduled. Behind the scenes, though, U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff confirmed there had been both direct and indirect communication between the two nations. Quiet negotiations, back-channel deals, the kind of diplomacy that happens when the world isn't looking. But not everyone wants peace. At least not like this. Just days after the ceasefire, Iran's parliament voted to fast-track a bill that would shut down cooperation with the IAEA, the very agency that monitors its nuclear program. It was a clear signal. Iran may talk, but it's not backing down. Not on its sovereignty, not on its nuclear ambitions. For now, missiles aren't flying. But the deeper war, one of politics, power, and survival, is still burning hot. NATO summit wasn't just another meeting. It was a turning point. With defense budgets skyrocketing and a new, tougher alliance emerging, the world's most powerful military bloc is reshaping itself in ways not seen since the Cold War. Donald Trump's unmistakable stamp was everywhere, bending NATO's future to his vision. Whether that's a cause for celebration or concern depends on who you ask. But one thing is clear: the old alliances are evolving, and the US is firmly back in the driver's seat. Meanwhile, Iran, wounded but unbowed, has sent a stark message that it won't back down quietly. The ceasefire might hold for now, but the tensions simmer just beneath the surface, threatening to ignite again. So what does this all mean? Is the world stepping toward lasting security, or are we just one misstep away from a deeper, more dangerous divide? Let us know what you think down in the comments below. For more political news, celebrity scandals, and more, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Now Famous Feed. Your support means the world to us. Thank you.